What do Chris Harper Mercer, Dylan Roof, and Elliot Rodger all have in common? In addition to being mass murderers, they're all simps. What is a simp? A simp is a man who places himself in a submissive position in order to win favor or sex from women. And what makes these guys killer simps is the fact that they all killed because they couldn't get the attention of a woman or because they couldn't get a girlfriend. And the reason why these guys couldn't get the attention of a woman or couldn't get a girlfriend had nothing to do with women at all. In this world, there are four women for every one man, and there are more women here in the United States than men. So there are opportunities all over the place for a man to pursue a relationship or even have sex with women. So that's not the reason why these men became killers. The reason why these men became killers were twofold. One was the way they were raised, and two was because many of these men grew up with unrealistic fantasy ideas regarding women. And I'll explore the idea of the way these men were raised. When I look at the backgrounds and the profiles of your Elliot Rodgers and your Dylan Roofs and your Chris Harper Mercers, all three of these men were raised with a too close attachment to their mother. Um, while there was a father in the home, the father was ineffective because the man was pretty much soft and weak, and he just never asserted himself as an authority figure in all these cases. In the case of Chris Harper Mercer, he pretty much divorced the mother, and then the boy wound up becoming clingy and dependent on his mother. In the case of Elliot Rodger, again, there was some divorce. I don't really know too much about Dylan Roof, but again, he was living in a basement, so that pretty much tells me where this guy was going. And all these guys, again, because they had a too close attachment to their mothers, they had no understanding of how balanced relationships really work, or even how to approach a balanced relationship. And because they were living like this, they never, understood how to make things work in the real world as according to relationships. Because what happened in all of these cases is that because they had that too close attachment to their mother, and their mother was catering to them, they expected people in the real world to do the same. And this isn't the case. When you go out into the real world, things are very different. In the real world, people don't cater to you. You literally have to adapt to doing things on somebody else's terms, especially in places like jobs and college. And this is where these guys really had problems because, again, they were used to their mothers doing everything for them. They're used to their mothers solving their problems, giving them what they wanted. And when they went out into the real world where they ran into conflict, they did not have the critical thinking skills or the problem solving skills to find solutions for their issues. And because they couldn't solve their issues, they wound up having trouble with basic things in life. Now, I look at the case of Chris Harper Mercer. I saw this pattern pretty much, to the letter. This guy, his mother, pretty much called an exterminator because he didn't like the roaches in the home. If he heard noise in the street, his mother would go out and tell people to be quiet. And in the case of Elliot Rodger, his mother pretty much gave him whatever he wanted, let him sit for days, and he was just out here unsupervised. Um, and this is what happens in a lot of cases with these killer simps, that their mothers pretty much do everything for them, and they never learn how to deal with and navigate this thing we call life. They never know or learn how to about rejections, failures, losses. People are always trying to accommodate them. They send them to special schools so they don't have to deal with things like being bullied and learning how to adapt to that situation. They never learn how to solve their own problems because someone is always solving a problem for them. And this type of enabling leads to a dysfunctional male when he grows up to adulthood, because this type of man grows up with a self-entitlement complex. This type of man believes that everybody is supposed to cater to him, everybody's supposed to do what he wants, and he doesn't have to follow any rules. This is why you guys like Chris Harper Mercer have a hard time dealing with authority figures. Because this is why he failed in the military. He ran into authority figures, he ran into conflict, and he pretty much fell apart. Now, that's one of the core reasons why these guys become really dysfunctional. And what happens is these guys simmer, they boil, and then eventually they just explode. and that's why they go out and commit these mass murders. The second reason why these men became killer simps is because of the way they thought. In the case of all three of these men, they were all living inside of their heads. And because they were living inside of their heads, they had unrealistic ideas on relationships. In the case of many of these simps, many of them get fantasy ideas about relationships, sex, and women from Madison Avenue advertising, Hollywood movies, and even pornography. And because they get these ideas from these three sources, they come up with a distorted picture of what real people and real relationships and real sexual relationships are like. In the case of your Elliot Rodger, he spent most of his time fantasizing about getting a blonde, blue-eyed girlfriend. And in the case of your Chris Harper Mercer, he just wanted a girlfriend. And in the case of your Dylan Roof, what he wanted was the girl who was out here pursuing the black guy. He was pining for her. And in all three of these cases, none of these men had the courage to go out and approach any women at all. They really wanted what they want. They didn't even have the courage to go out and ask for. And the reason why these guys couldn't do this, again, goes back to the way they were raised. They had never learned how to deal with something we call conflict. And conflict, when it comes down to relationships, and dealing with women, is when you have to deal with the possibility that she may say yes or she may say no. And these guys just couldn't even have the courage to even go up to a woman to even see if she would say yes or no. They had pretty much had this fantasy in their minds, and they didn't want to go out into the real world to go out and have to deal with the possibility of somebody shattering their fantasy. And this happens in a lot of cases of these other types of simps, such as your power simp and your mangina. They have conflict issues, and they can't go outside into the world and deal with conflict. And because they can't deal with conflict, most women don't even know that they're even interested in them. And that shows how dysfunctional these males are, because these males just don't have the backbone or the testicles to go out and deal with something that's just as basic as just asking someone for a cup of coffee or something. These guys just don't know how to do that. They don't have the social skills, they don't have the life skills, and they just don't have, again, the courage to go out here. So what these guys do is, because they feel that their fantasy is never going to come true, they simmer, they boil, and they get angry, and eventually these guys explode in these acts of violence. And what makes these acts of violence so dysfunctional is that these guys are just plain, backwards and selfish, because they are putting their imagined need for attention and sex above the lives of others. They think that sex and women have such a high value that they're willing to literally sacrifice not only the lives of other people for it, but the lives of others for it. I mean, themselves for it. And because they do that, it shows that they have this just clearly just insane regard for the value of women, and not even women, because they don't even value women. What they value is the social currency they believe they will get from having sex with women. That's really what they want. A lot of these simps, again, because they grow up watching movies, looking at advertising and pornography that tells them that, sex will make you popular, sex will make you attractive, and sex will make you somebody. They believe that because they can't get sex, they're going to be denied some sort of value. And it shows you, how dysfunctional these men truly are. And I'm looking at the trend of these killer simps and how it's escalated over the last 2 years. And it shows me that we truly have a problem with the way we are raising males here in America. A lot of people think that this has to do with gun violence, when it really has to do with men learning a set of dysfunctional values that teaches them to put women on not only just put women on pedestals, but put the value of sex on a pedestal, and to think that that sex and women have more value than things like their own personal intangibles, such as their dignity, their self-respect, and their self-worth, and even their own human life. And because these men think in this dysfunctional fashion, they and feel that they will never, get the girl of their dreams or get attention from the girl of their dreams. They feel that they have nothing to lose and they should go out here and commit mass murders. And these killer simps, as I see it, you know, the trend is going to get worse before it gets better, because we have a lot of males out here who have been raised dysfunctional, who are growing up with really bad ideas and really bad values, and they're not understanding that, you know, sex is a small part of life. Relationships with women are a small part of life, and it's not something you would go out and commit mass murder for because you couldn't get attention from a girl, or you couldn't get attention from the girl of your dreams. I mean, again, it's a small part of life, and any smart thinking man is going to, put himself first and put his own life and his own safety at first. I've seen other cases regarding this dysfunction. Here in New York, there was a guy here named Terrell Shaw, and what he would do was, because he had no social skills and no life skills, what he would do was he would run up and down the street asking Asian women for their phone numbers. Now, he had a fixation on getting an Asian woman, and because he had no life skills, he would just run up to random women, ask them for their phone numbers, and when they wouldn't give it to him, he would get angry and he would assault these women. And when the police came looking for this man, they found him hanging in an elevator shaft. And it showed me, this case, how these men, how dysfunctional these men are, and how little they even value their own safety and their own health, regard it all because they want to get the attention of a female, or the sex and social, or what they perceive social currency they'll get from a female. And it's really sad to see that, these men are never raised to understand that they have to put themselves first, put their health first, put their safety first. And I'm seeing this with a lot of men, and even my family members in education are seeing it regarding the way even boys are growing up today. They're learning to put value on things rather than putting value on themselves and saying, look, I have value, I have worth, and I need to put myself first and put my needs first. Because when a man puts himself first, puts his needs first, and sets his own goals for himself and makes them the top priority, guess what's going to happen? He's going to radiate a masculine energy that attracts people to him. And in that circle, usually when you're radiating that positive energy, usually both men and women are coming to you, and the women who are coming to you have something in common with you and have something to share with you. But in the case of many of these killer simps, because they fixate on a fantasy, they wind up never meeting any of those four women who would have something in common with them or have some sort of interest in them, because they're still caught up in this fantasy, still trying to hope to achieve this fantasy, when the whole idea of this fantasy is unattainable and completely ridiculous, because anyone who usually looks like that fantasy usually is a predator, and those predators are out to use guys. And these killer simps, they never understand this whole concept of putting yourself first, putting your needs first, and setting your own goals, because again, their whole world is usually because they're so close and so close centered to their mother, is about pleasing women, making women happy, or appeasing women so that they can, indirectly get their needs met in some sort of way. And when they can't get their needs met, these men become frustrated, they become angry, and then they explode in these adult temper tantrums where they go out and commit mass murders because they couldn't get, you know, get attention from women or get sex from women, when they could have, all they had to do, was go out here and experience this thing called life, take these bumps, take these lumps, and deal with it. Because in real life, every one of us has to deal with rejection. Of us has to deal with somebody saying no to us, and it's how we deal with people saying no to us that builds our character and builds our resolve and enables us to, learn from our mistakes, learn how to adapt, and really learn how to move ourselves forward. But because these men are raised in sheltered homes, they never learn these natural life skills that all of us have to learn. I mean, I have been rejected by women on several occasions. Um, I've had to deal with male authority figures. I've had to deal with failures in life. And as a writer, I deal again with rejection almost all the time. I mean, many of these books that I have published, when I would submit them, they've gotten 400 and 500 rejections. But over the time that you get deal with rejection, you know, you build that thick skin, and eventually the no's roll off you. Whenever you, so while you're going through the process of hearing all these no's, you pretty much, can take them and move on. So you're eventually ready for somebody to say yes. But again, the way we raise men, they're not learning this natural process to life that it takes a lot of no's to get to that one yes, and you have to have the discipline, the character, and the resolve to get to that point so that you can take these rejections and these losses so that when you finally win, you can, you know, be able to capitalize on the opportunities that are given to you. Because again, there are opportunities for relationships with women every day. There are opportunities for women paying attention to you every day. I mean, I run into them every day myself. And they're all out here, but because these men, aren't raised right, they're not able to see those opportunities. And because they're inside of their head, they can't see the world that's going on around them or understand how that world works. Um, and I'm seeing, again, this whole trend of these killer simps because, again, all goes back to the way these boys are raised, all goes back to the fantasies that these boys have in their heads. And because there is no real model for manhood to teach these men, you know, the way the world works or how to work with in society, these guys are literally having adult temper tantrums and meltdowns. And they're not only taking their own lives in these massacres, they're taking the lives of innocent people who had nothing to do with it. If these guys just had the same information I had back in 1986, I think they would have been better people. That's where I learned that there were 4 women for every 1 man, way back when I was a teenager, and that there are opportunities all over this place. I mean, they're not just in bars, they're not just in clubs, they're just not in parties. They're everywhere. I mean, you can just walk down the street and there's females paying attention to you. It's everywhere. But these guys, because of the way they are raised, they never understand, these simple and basic concepts about men and women and social situations. And because they never understand these concepts, they never gain the tools that they need to grow. And I look at this whole trend and I'm seeing an entire generation of males who are growing up like this, because for us to have 45 mass shootings here in the United States, it shows us that this has nothing to do really with guns, and it has to do with the culture that is being taught to these males over the last 50 years. And we really have to examine our culture and examine the way we are raising boys, because when we have boys who think that the only way they can solve problems is with a gun, we have a problem with the way we are raising our boys to become men. That's all I have to say for this video. And I have a book called Stop Simping: Why Men Don't Need Finance to Get Romance. The book is on Smashwords for free. And inside of this book, I explain the simp paradigm and how this life paradigm is dysfunctional, and how it prevents men from growing up to be, healthy and pursue healthy relationships with women. Again, the Stop Simping: Why Men Don't Need Finance to Get Romance is available on Smashwords for free. The book will help a lot of men out there, and I wrote the book to help men. So if you want to pick it up, just click the link in the description box. Again, that's all I have to say for this video. Comment, rate, and subscribe.